Hi, Sheridan Webb here from the Training Designers Club, which is the place to go for practical L&D support, especially if you are a busy lone L&D professional. And today I'm tackling a question that was asked of me a couple of weeks ago, which is how do you decide what type of activity to include and when? And I'm not going to lie, it did kind of put me on the spot because it's one of those things that's almost instinctive to me. And I thought maybe there is some sort of scientific method that I should be applying, but if there is, I don't know what it is. So in this video, I'm just going to share some things that I think we need to take into account when selecting activities to make sure that they achieve what we want them to. So the first thing to think about is what's the purpose of the activity? And in my mind, there's three main reasons that we're going to put an activity in there. First is to trigger thinking. So to generate some creativity, to introduce a topic, to maybe give people an experience, to get them to just start to think about the concepts that you're going to be exploring in more detail. Now, for those sorts of activities, you can tend to do things that I think are quite generic, quite broad, quite creative, quite free flowing. Things that don't have a right and wrong answer. People can learn a lot just from having the experience. So this is where your classic exercises like, the marshmallow and spaghetti exercise or the cave rescue, those that have been around for absolutely ages. And a savvy facilitator will be able to bring out all sorts of learning points from those exercises and link it to whatever the topic is. Because those exercises are very much about giving people a shared experience that you can link back to and they can reflect upon. The other reason we might include an exercise is to explore a topic, to explore an idea, a model, some sort of ideas. These sorts of exercises do need to have a bit more structure. We do need to guide the participants a little bit, and I think they need to have a clear objective. So by the end of this exercise, we need to have achieved something, we need to have produced something, we need to have considered something. Now that something may still be quite flexible. So for example, think of a case study. You may give somebody a case study and say, well, thinking about situational leadership that we've just discussed, which style do you think this manager is showing? What makes you think that? What would you advise them to do to change their style? So there's lots of right answers to that. Things like populating a model as well. So we may have, again, let's stick with situational leadership. We've introduced that model and then we want people to really understand what that means for them in their line of work. So go away and think of 4 different examples for each of the boxes. That's an exploring type activity. We're not going to be, unless someone's gone right off the mark, whatever they come up with is generally okay and we can gently guide them to the correct answer, but it's a way for them to explore those ideas and to sift for the meaning if you follow the master model, which you know I am a massive fan of. The third main reason that we include an activity is so that people can demonstrate their learning. So in these activities, we're going to have a much tighter brief. We're going to have proper expectations as to what people are going to have to produce or demonstrate. So this is where your typical present back, where your role plays, where your quizzes are going to come in, because we're looking to see that people have actually grasped what it is we've been teaching them. So understand what is the purpose of your activity. Is it just to generate thinking? Is it to explore ideas? Or is it to demonstrate learning? That is going to give you a guide as to what type of activity you're going to include. Other things to think about is your topic. So obviously some topics are going to be much more creative in their nature and others are going to be less so. So if we are discussing, I don't know, influencing skills, we can probably do lots of creative exercises around that, customer service, because there's lots and lots of different ways that we can apply good practice. If you're covering compliance training or Excel training, they're going to be much more specific exercises because people need to be able to do things or know things, and there's less wriggle room in there. There's less creativity allowed. So that's one thing that you need to consider. Also with things, with the topic, is things like teaching Excel is that you're going to probably include lots of small exercises consistently throughout the whole workshop. Whereas with if you're doing coaching, for example, you may do a few little exercises and then a really big one to bring everything together. So that's going to dictate the type of exercises you choose to do and when. You need to consider the time you have. Now, if we are clever, we can use activities as the main thing. We certainly don't need to be doing lots and lots of presenting. And one big activity can be debriefed multiple ways to bring out lots of different learning points. But it does have to be proportionate. If you've only been given a 90-minute session, is it realistic to spend 60 minutes of that just doing one activity? Maybe, but chances are probably not. So we need to think about how long that activity is going to take to set up, to run, and to debrief, and make sure it's proportionate. When putting together a session, we also need to think about what have we already done and what are we doing later. We don't want to do the same type of activity over and over, or maybe have 3 discussion flip chart based activities all in the morning. We need to be able to mix things up a little bit to keep everybody engaged and to keep things fresh. So just make sure that we're not using too much of the same thing one after the other. So that is something else to consider. And the final thing to consider is your participants. What are they likely to get involved with? What are they likely to enjoy? And that needs to guide your thinking as to the type of activities that you're going to do. We all know that there are some types of people who are going to be well up for doing a song and a dance and dressing up quite literally, and others who are going to find a card sort activity a little bit woo-woo. So do think about who is actually going to be taking part in this training and the type of activities that they're going to respond well to. So that's just my thinking as to how we decide what activities to include when and why. And maybe you have other ideas as well, and I would love to hear them. And this is the sort of thing that we discuss all the time in the VIP member area in the Training Designers Club. So do check us out. Check out the website for free and low cost resources, join our free Facebook group, or for maximum benefit, come and be a VIP member. You'll find more information at www.trainingdesignersclub.co.uk.